So what would be a deal breaker?
Deal breaker are the core things. You can't really modify the chassis. So if the steering geometry is not making you feel like you should, the bike is feeling unnatural to ride in any way. It is steering slower than you expect or faster than you expect. If it drops to lean angle so sharply that it upsets you, then you have to work out, will you get used to it or not? Because the bike is not going to fundamentally change. You can play with tire profiles and all if you're really going to go down that rabbit hole and try to find yourself a solution. But it is a sharp steering / lazy steering bike. And if that's not your cup of tea, that's not your cup of tea. You can't fix that. Right? The engine's power delivery you can tweak it slightly by changing a sprocket, making a little bit of a change. But the fundamental nature of the engine, can you take a thirsty engine and make it fuel efficient? No. The Triumphs, for example, are slightly thirsty, especially if you ride them hard. That's what it is. You're buying that. This people will understand. This is the one area where it is crystal clear. Where an efficient bike is an efficient bike and a non-efficient bike is a non-efficient bike, and people get upset with the non-efficiency and reject those bikes. Accept it. No issues there. Seat, handlebar, easy fixes. Menu systems, can't fix those.
Correct.
So I don't even remember that Royal Enfield has that feature where it mirrors the Google map onto that. It is so poorly executed that to me that feature might as well not exist. So have I ever recommended...
Because the screen has to be on your phone.
Yeah. So have I ever recommended a Himalayan on the basis of that as a feature?
No,
it's outside my consideration set. And remember, my questioning, my thought process is always saying, do I need it? And how much value add will it actually do? Right?
There are so many things. We spoke about the seats because I started with that because that becomes invisible. Ergonomics becomes invisible.
Yeah, and there's no easy way to fix a car seat. It's much more complicated today with airbags and all of that being in that area.
No two ways about it. And see, all those things will point towards a bigger issue. And like we said, often when I see seats like that, I start thinking about suspension. When I see suspension that's too soft, I start thinking about the chassis. If it feels bumpy, I'm going to think about what else is not right. So these are all things that will show you something else. So the same way, when I see refinement, okay? So refinement is super critical. For me, it is a deal breaker. If an engine is not smooth enough, if an engine power delivery is not, again, smooth enough, it's a problem.
Yeah, because and unfixable in most cases.
You can't fix it, and you do not realize that in the long run, it will make you a poorer driver.
Yeah.
It will make you a aggressive driver because you have to work hard to get the car to do what you want it to do. It's going to make you feel restless every time you're on the road. It's going to, as likely as not, you think of it as a value. You know, very often people will buy a base variant, an engine saying ki, "Arey, baki to gaadi same hai. Engine mein thoda power kam hai."
Correct.
Let's say that engine is actually a weak engine. But the point is, you saved, let's say, ₹1,00,000 by not getting the more powerful engine. But at the end of the day, that 10 lakh rupee vehicle, if you're going to use it less or enjoy it less, have you got better value for money or worse value for money?
Yeah, absolutely.
You cannot take away from the fact that a better engine, a better driving experience is built on these few core things, and everything else is built around it to make it more attractive.
Yeah.
It's not to help you travel better. It's to just make it a easier sell.
Yeah.
So the niggles are invariably the ones that become deal breakers, are the ones which will be invisible in cars.
Correct.
So the heat you will not feel. Ab AC, jaise hum Skoda VW, it has an air conditioning system, it has a touch panel, it's all cool. But started up like the other day, my brother he called me, he lives in Nagpur, my cousin, and he was on the verge of buying that. So I told him what I thought of the suspension. And I told him, just remember one thing, you're in Nagpur on a summer afternoon. When you start that thing up,
you'll be touching that panel a lot.
You're going to be waiting. You're not going to enjoy that experience. And that is a deal breaker. It's maybe a niggle for somebody living in Kashmir, maybe.
Sure.
But when you're living in Nagpur, it's a proper deal breaker.
Yeah.
So these are things that are so much harder to find in cars, I feel. There are some, and harder and harder still now because the baseline has gotten better.
Yeah, of course.
There's no two ways about it. The most obvious ones are coming down to the technology aspects. And I want less. As much as we are going further and further into more tech, the less they have, the better it is, because very few of them are genuinely useful and very few of them are executed well. So ADAS nahi chahiye. We have been recommending regularly that if you can buy a variant without ADAS, go for it.
Yeah.
And most recently, the example with the 3XO with its ADAS and its everything else, all those intimations and the warning chimes and everything. I don't want to live with that, and for me that is a deal breaker. Somebody may say that, "Arey theek hai, kya baat hai? आवाज ही तो कर रहा है, beep कर रहा है," but it's so painful. It just eats into the driving experience.
Yeah.
I don't want it. That's not what a car is supposed to do to my driving experience.
Yeah.
So it cannot work that way.
No.
So anything to do, and we are using electronics more and more with our drivetrains and everything, the basic hardware has to be great for the experience to be great.
Correct.
And an example of this is like previously with the Hyundai DCTs. I would not buy them. Not because, people are worried about reliability and stuff like that. They were not a DCT experience. It wasn't good enough. It was not, everybody is going towards dual clutches because efficiency is going to get better with dual clutches. And that is key to everyone because emissions matter. So that's where the real impact is going to be.
Right.
But the dual clutch experience was, it was not even as good as the torque converter.
There's a duh clutch transmission.
Oh, good one. It was 100%. It was like, huh? Then it would come. It was really sad. So, you look at that, no matter what you do with everything else around it, but if the gearbox itself is slow.
Correct. What can the software do?
Yeah. And in that case, I would have picked an IMT any day over the dual clutch, saying that it's okay. I will. So that case, is that a deal breaker? It being slow? Yes, it is for me.
Yeah.
Because when I'm paying money for that gearbox,
it better work.
It better work. I'm paying less for that IMT. It's simpler. You have to put in some work, but it's doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. Is it doing what the bike does as per my expectations?
Correct.
That I think becomes the filter for it matters or it doesn't.
Yeah.
You thought this video was long? Boy, oh boy. You gotta head to the main MotorInc channel and see what we can really do.